Hey guys, Joe Bonamassa here. Sit back and enjoy the one, the only, Mr. Buddy Guy on this episode of KTBA Artist Spotlight.
They had one guy that they used to go, my parents and them great uncles and all that used to go get him on Christmas, and he had a little acoustic guitar and he could play. And my parents wasn't able to buy toys for us out there in the country. If you knew how to make a little toy, maybe you got away with it. But every time they would go from house to house in the country, which wasn't that many houses, they would all drink the beer and the wine. They would go to sleep, and I would go get his guitar and try to figure out what he was doing. And that wouldn't come back no more until next Christmas. My dad finally got that a two-string guitar from that guy I'm telling you would come every Christmas. And we finally got a phonograph. And that's when John Lee Hooker come up, I think around 1948 or 49, with Boogie Children. And I was trying to figure out what it was, and finally I had something sound like it, and I think I must have played it for 6 hours because I wanted to make sure somebody hear me play it. I was afraid to move my fingers off the guitar because I didn't never think I would find that again. And that started it all. And by the way, to make the long story short, I finally met him a few years before he died, and I had the fun of my life by meeting and playing with John Lee Hooker. We was on a tour in Europe called American Folk Blues Festival, and I didn't know he stuttered. And they was all downstairs, all of them was drinking heavy. Big Mama Thornton, I had never met her. It was John Lee, Big Mama Thornton, J.B. Lenore, which I had met him because he was in Chicago. So when I walked down early that morning, they was drinking like they was eating breakfast, and it wasn't food. They was drinking whiskey in Germany. And I wanted to meet him, and I heard him stuttering, so I said, I don't want to be bothered with this guy, whoever it was, because I wanted to meet John Lee. So I just picked up a guitar like that and went in the corner and started hitting a lick of Boogie Children. And he came over stuttering, who is you? And I'm like, oh my God, I ain't gonna never meet John Lee Hooker now because this guy here gonna worry me to death, and I can't understand what he's saying. And he kept on, he never did say his name was John Lee, you know, and I just kept trying to get rid of him. And I think somebody say, John Lee, and he answered. And then somebody called him Johnny, and he just laughed till he cried. He knew I didn't know who he was, you know. And he kept saying, I'm Johnny. I said, so what? I don't meet no Johnny. I want to meet John Lee. And until he died, man, he just cracked up every time he saw me. He would remind me of that. Even when I went to Chicago, I drove a tow truck for a while and played the guitar at night because I was just in love with the music. And you couldn't look up and say a Rolling Stones, or Eric Clapton, or Jeff Beck, the way the money being paid for a great musician now. You know, I couldn't see that. So I just wanted to see Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Little Walter and them play. And they found out I could play a Jimmy Reed or a few licks like Muddy Waters, and they just start hugging me and trying to give me that lift to don't give it up and just keep playing. And I just say, well, we'll keep playing. And when I found out they wasn't making a decent living at it, I'm like saying, we just love music and we just want to play something to make people happy in Louisiana on weekends. But Chicago was like 7 days a week making people happy. So I say, I'm going to stay here because I can listen to these guys and maybe learn a little more about my guitar. In 1967, which was 10 years later, I was driving a tow truck, and a guy by the name of Dick Waterman, which was Bonnie Raitt's boyfriend, came to the Ford place where I was working, and I was laying down on a truck working on it, changing oil or something. And he said, you're a guitar player and you could lose a finger if something happened with one of these jacks on this truck, and you won't be able to play the guitar no more. Saying, I want to talk to you when you get off work. And I said, okay, but I wasn't falling for that. And anyway, he said, I found out how much you make here. I was making $2.11 an hour. And he said, I can write you a post-dated check equal this for a year if you want to come out on the road and play. And you probably make a little more than you make now. And I didn't trust that. So I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take a vacation or two. My 2 weeks vacation is coming up, and I'll go out and look at what you're talking about. And I went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Toronto, Canada. And when I got to Canada, I heard my name called. It was Mariposa Blues Festival. And I heard people say, now that's the real Buddy Guy. I'm like, why is the fake one? And my late friend Junior Wells had another guy. I had made a record with him, an album called The Hoodoo Man. And he had taken another guitar player out there, and they was calling him Buddy Guy. And the Canadians, when I hit a few licks, they said the real Buddy Guy, and I found out that later on. And I did the 2 weeks out there. I played Ann Arbor, Michigan, Toronto, and I think it was Boston and upstate New York at a college. And when I got back to Chicago, I went to work that Monday morning. My boss looked at me, and I didn't open my mouth. He said, before you leave, you'll teach somebody how to drive a truck like you. Most blues clubs in the early days was like, if you had one hold 60 people, you had a big club, you know, and that's why the B.B. King and all of them was playing, but they had what you call a ballroom. After they got a pretty good selling record, then they would put you in a ballroom. The promoter would come from here and go to Alabama and book the ballroom and sell these big placards and everything, tickets in advance. And that's why you would get the T-Bone Walkers, the B.B. King, the Bobby Bland, and people like Junior Parker and people like that. But when you went back in and didn't be on that tour, you was in a small blues club. Some of them hold 30 people, 40. And I would say 50 or 60 was the largest blues club you would play in. Well, they had so many great guitar players there, man. My thing was, I got that from Guitar Slim. When he made the big record things I used to do, I was like saying, okay, I heard B.B. King, which was left hand, can't nobody match that. So I wanted to see him because this things I used to do, I took off, and it was like tearing the airwaves up. We didn't have no FM station, and the AM station was playing everything gospel, you know, the blues and whatever else. Little Richard was coming on. So I went to they had the place called Temple Roof in Baton Rouge where they would rent the hall. Like I told you, in the Guitar Slam, I was the first one there. No seats, so I said, well, I'm gonna make sure I get there so I can see what his fingers were doing. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Guitar Slam, and all I did was hear the guitar, and I didn't see nobody. I said, well, I done messed up my night now. This is a fake. And all of a sudden, he was coming in the door on somebody's shoulder like a little baby. A big heavyset guy was bringing him in with a red suit, white hat, and white shoes, and he was whooping his guitar. I said, my God, I want to play like B.B. King, but I want to act like him. And I never got a chance to meet him personally like I did B.B. King, but that's why I got those ideas from. So when I went to Chicago, most blues players were sitting in chairs with music stands. And I can't read a lick of music. I said, well, I better go back now and see can I learn how to read music. Come to find out neither one of them was reading music, but they had to stand as I'm reading, but they wasn't as I got to know them. So I decided to do the Guitar Slam on them. I just jump off the stage and run out in the audience. I still do that. And sometimes I can get attention like that where I couldn't keep up with, there was a Wayne Bennett, a Matt Murphy, Earl Hooker. I could go on till tomorrow naming those guitar players I was trying to steal licks from. And I did learn a lot from listening to them. But they would look at me and say, that's a wild man. And I said, well, I got somebody to notice me by being wild, not by just playing. Because I could never stand there and do it like Eric Clapton and B.B. King and make you listen to me, but I could make a move on you and you would say, what did he do? You know, and I said, okay, I just rubbed it across my chest. Well, I think you got to get the British credit for that because they exploded the blues, took it a step higher than the Muddies and the B.B. Kings. And the people who I admired and what we call stealing licks from. And then that's when they start putting us in these big outdoor things, and the big theaters came first, which was Chicago, the Riga Theater, Howard Theater in Washington, and then you had the Apollo in New York, which I think is still there. And it was the theaters. Then it became these the Hollywood Bowl, and Ravinia in Chicago, which biggest, the outdoors where you can hold 30 or 40,000 people out there. And that was like, what is this? Because it was like, to me, I cry. There's this many people coming to hear B.B. King, Muddy Waters, or Little Richard, or whoever was playing. Now you can say, well, maybe I don't have to drive the truck no more. I can go play, and this many people will come and pay, and you could get a decent salary. Everybody was going to London because the British was saying, bring it on, ton. Let me give you an example. Muddy Waters, I don't know if that trombone player is still playing, the name Chris Barber in England, and he brought Muddy Waters over there first, and Muddy went there with the electric guitar, and they booed him. Now this come from Muddy, and Muddy didn't think they liked him too well because they was into Big Bill Broomsby with the acoustic guitar. They wasn't aware of this amplifier with all this loudness. The next year, Chris invited Muddy back, and he didn't take the amplifier. He said he got ready and took the acoustic guitar, and they booed him for coming back with the acoustic because they was ready for the electric guitar then. And Muddy told me he was a victim of circumstance because they was ready for it then. And that's when the British started exploring it with the big Marshall amplifiers and things like that. And that's when I first went in and played with the Yardbirds, and until later when I got to meet them, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page said they slept in a van to see me play, and they didn't know a Strat could play blues till they saw me. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? And we laugh about that every time we get together now. I had never been in Chess' office, but they would always use me when Muddy got ready to make a record, The Wolf Waltz, and I was making records with just a guitar player because they thought I was a studio musician, but I wasn't, because Muddy and them would tell them, if you want it played right, go get Buddy. He'll play it right. Because a lot of guitar players would say, here's my shot to explore. I'm on the set with Muddy. I ain't going to play with the woman. I'm going to make sure I get hurt. Well, I wasn't like that. I was like, if Muddy Waters asked me to play, man, I'm sitting on the top of the world, which I think Howlin' Wolf and somebody else made a record about him sitting on top of the world. And that was like as far as I wanted to go at that time, because I'm still learning from them. And when he called me in the office, I said, well, I won't be making that little $15 every time I make a record with Muddy and them anymore, because Leonard Chess probably going to tell me, don't come down here no more, And he walks in, he puts on one of these, I think it was the Cream or Jimi Hendrix, and he said, I don't want to curse, because they would all curse, man. He said, these MFs is playing your stuff, and they telling me they got this from you, and we too dumb to listen to you. I want you to kick me in my butt. And he bent over, and I'm saying, maybe I should, but no. And that's when he told me I could come in the studio and do whatever I wanted. But then it was a bit too late to say, Buddy was creating it a little louder, because I was trying to give him that little feedback with my playing, because I got that from a guy named Guitar Slim in New Orleans, which made a big record called Things I Used to Do. Him and Ray Charles, because they was making pretty good blues records down in the South, which was never making North, because I got to Chicago before B.B. King ever played Chicago, and I couldn't believe that. I went there in 57, he showed up in 58, said he had never played Chicago before. When I can make someone smile, do you know I sleep better at night? Because music do something to people. And I know some people are angry, and especially in the world today, they got people angry and don't know what they're angry about. But if I catch you out there listening to me, if you angry, I'm gonna make you forget about it for at least 20 or 30 minutes, hopefully for the whole set I'm there. So maybe you can go back home and say, wow, you know, that guy made me had a little joyful time out there tonight with all this other pressure I got on me. Was it a family, a job, or whatever else it is? I can take that away from you for whatever time I'm on stage playing, and then I feel much better about that. Now that's my biggest concern when I play, even though I know I want to be the best that I can, but I also want to try to make someone else happy as I am. Happy as I am playing, I want you to be happy as I am listening.